Good morning, everybody.
And good afternoon in about a minute or so.
Not quite.
Oh, my timing's awful. Hello, everyone. We're Shades of Vengeance, and we like making things.
Okay, we're done now. Bye.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Leo. That's Ed. And we're going to tell you a little bit of why we do what we do and how we think we can help you out.
We are hoping today to talk about the process that we follow to be creative. Shades of Vengeance, we've published over 100 books, comics, card games, novels, you name it. We've done a lot of different things. Audio dramas, them too.
Them too. I'm not on social media here. I have my notes. I'm just being a millennial.
It'd be a lot more fun if you were on social media. Just saying. Doing it at the same time.
Yeah, come to us at end 8, blah, blah, blah. All righty.
All right, so we are going to start from the beginning of being creative. And some of you might already know this stuff. Some of you might not. Some of you might have been to one of our panels before and know this stuff. But we are going to cover that ground, and then we're going to move on through some of the more, I guess, complicated applications of it, and then onward through to the common problems that people face before we then hopefully still have time for a Q&A because I talk too much.
Yes, we're going to try and get to questions at the end. But to start us off, I've got an idea, Ed.
Actually, I'd be willing to bet everyone in the audience probably has at least one idea. It might be something that you thought was never terribly important, or it might be something that you think is too derivative or whatever, but I'd be willing to bet that pretty much everyone has some kind of creative idea if you're sat there. We're going to talk about how you turn that idea, well, first of all, pick an idea, and then turn that idea into the thing that you're going to create. So you have one idea, that's easy. You're going to do that one thing, that's easy. You have 5 ideas, you have 10 ideas, you have 20 ideas. How do you pick which one you're going to actually create? And the answer is, choose your favorite. For your first creative project, it's not complicated. Choose your favorite idea. Because if you don't enjoy a creative project the first time you do it, you're quite unlikely to do a second one, right? I mean, common sense. So go for your favorite creative idea that you have. Go for the one that speaks to you, that you would really like to see exist. Bring that to life. Then think about the other ideas and try and order them and end up with a list of 17 ideas that you haven't got to yet, like I have.
And genuinely, go for the themes that you really care about. Don't try and think, oh, but what if people don't want to do this, or what if I can't make it into this thing, because that will come with time. We've got a fun way of summarizing the core themes that motivate an idea, don't we, Ed?
We do. We call it the project paradigm. So the idea behind this is to come up with a short sentence that you can refer back to whenever you're doing something creative, whenever you're sitting down to work on this project. You have this short sentence that says what you want to achieve. Leo has a favorite, I have a favorite. Leo, go ahead.
It reminds you why you're doing this, what's the motivating factor. My personal favorite, cowboys in space. Because and I bet you everyone can think of a different show that can be summarized by cowboys in space. But because I can focus on that, it speaks to me specifically and lets me go to that idea.
So that's a very, very simple concept that obviously can be taken in a lot of different ways. I think my favorite is probably one that actually made it into the title of the film, which is Snakes on a Plane. That is the project paradigm for that movie. And Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Snakes on a Plane with Samuel L. Jackson there. Let's do the thing. Okay. If you have a project paradigm to refer back to, and you've made a decision on what you want to do, while you work through the thing that you're creating, you can constantly look back at this. We actually like printing it out and sticking it on the wall in the work area. And we go, okay, that's
the thing. Refer back to the thing.
Is that part of that idea? So obviously that's a very high concept that you're following so that you can focus your efforts in that direction.
But it's not just about that, because obviously you can't make an idea without doing a little bit of research. It's a thing I like to call read, watch, play. That's how you get your inspiration. You read comics, you read books. If you're writing a novel, you read other novels, or maybe you play video games. You can take inspiration from anywhere, and it's it's important to not pigeonhole yourself. You know, if you, I'm building my Cowboys in Space thing, but I could always look at film noir or war movies or even a cookbook, because there might be something there that could be useful, you know.
Inspiration can come from anywhere. The point of read, watch, play is be aware of what you're doing. Consume media. Find out how other people did a thing, and then think about how you want to do it differently. This is actually the way the industry does it. So they'll go, okay, well, I liked this. I liked Star Wars, but I wish this, then this, and this, and this had happened. So I'm going to make my thing that is kind of adjacent. Maybe I'll make it a fantasy thing. Maybe I'll make it in medieval Britain with King Arthur.
The Seventh Samurai was really good, but you know what would be better? Cowboys. Magnificent Indeed. Cowboys.
Indeed. So when you look at something, when you read something, when you watch, when you play, think about, how would I do this differently? This is an exercise that I go through very, very frequently, actually. I was doing it yesterday after watching a movie. How would you do this differently? What would you do to make this thing better? Or how would you make it different so that it was more what you wanted to see rather than what the person who made it wanted to create? I guarantee you that if you want to see it, there is somebody else out there who also wants to see that thing. At the point where you've made it to what you want to see, all you have to do is go find that person. Those people, hopefully, more than one.
That's the reason we're all here. People have found things that they like because there's a creative thing that speaks to them. Everyone's idea in this room will speak to at least one more person in this entire building, because there's lots of people interested in fun things. So, we're going to get down to some nitty-gritty now. I've come up with my Cowboys in Space thing, but now I need to build a world. How should we go about making a universe, Ed?
So the obvious thing that most people do when they start creating a universe is exactly what I did the first time, which is you go away, you go, okay, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Oh yeah, I got to add this, and nobody wants to read that, right? What matters is not the fictional history you're coming from. Creating it can be really important and really, really helpful because you need to know what happened. But nobody needs to read a history book to understand that Napoleon probably wasn't a great guy, right? He probably was a little bit of a nasty guy, right? You don't need to know everything that happened to him prior to that. You can go and look into it. You can go and find out. But it's not hard to figure out that probably a dude who killed that many people, not very nice. So think about, yeah, fine, you can build your history. That's absolutely fine. But think about what you actually need to say within your creative project. What you need to say is the feelings. Not really the events, but the feelings they've resulted in. So, for example, let's say that I'm building a universe where there's a dark god who's about to erupt from within a volcano after thousands of years of sleep, and there was a historic battle where he was imprisoned in there, whatever. What matters is, okay, the story's going to be based in the village on the edge of that volcano. So what do the people actually experience? When you come into that story, what do they feel? Maybe they feel an uptick in anger. Maybe there are more fights breaking out. Maybe that's the first thing that you see. But all you need to do is start describing that, and then when the old god turns up, people are going to understand why that happened. That will imply a lot more about what's gone on in the world than going, yes, there was this thing that happened, and then this other thing happened, and then this other thing happened. Because it feels like you have to read a history book in order to understand the story you're being told. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody even wants to read my history books.
So we've come up with, let's jump on this Dark God Mountain saga then. We've got the, what's the word I'm looking for? We've got the bad feelings coming up. Mm-hmm. But what would be the central conflict for this universe we've built? Because that's only one event. That's only one feeling and subsequent event. How do we keep that through line going? So
understanding what the central conflict of your universe is an important part of building that world. So, is there a battle for good and evil going on over here? While actually the real thing that matters to your story is something completely different. That dark god's there, but honestly, the person that you're focusing on is the dude who just wants to leave town. Like, the fights that are going on just make him more and more want to leave because it's just an unpleasant place to live. And he's going to go and have his own adventure. And then when the Dark God erupts, maybe he'll go back or maybe he won't be involved at all. What story are you telling? Because the story that you want to be telling needs to be the most important story in that universe in that moment. The reason that I say that is quite a lot recently. There's one particular franchise that will remain nameless that is quite guilty of this. People keep telling us, oh, here are all the other stories that happened, and by the way, there is a more interesting story over there, but no, I'm telling you this one. And you're sort of sitting there going, yeah, but you're saying there's something interesting over there. I kind of want to go over there, yeah? So think about that, because if someone sat there reading a story and finding out that there's a more interesting story somewhere else, they're going to disengage. That's going to pull them away from reading the thing that you're trying to make, or watching, or playing, or whatever it is you're creating. I'm going with reading here.
Just before,
consider it a general verb.
Just because you've got the camera over there doesn't mean you can't think about the stuff that's happening off screen. Everyone's story is completely different. You know, you've come to us. Someone is eating rice balls somewhere else. You know, everyone's doing their own little thing. So,
and they're missing the most important story in the universe at this moment.
Yes, they're missing the most important story in the universe. Yes, this one.
So the point is that what happens off screen may well have an influence on screen. So the person who's off eating rice balls might come charging through here in a minute and completely disrupt everything. That's fine, but you didn't need to know they were eating rice balls until the moment when they appear.
And every event has repercussions. So even if you're not building your history, there might be things that come up. There might be characters that say things or backstories that you build on that could influence something else, inspire something else. There are, you know, after effects of things that happened 50 years ago that we're still feeling today. That applies to your creative world just as well. But you don't need to worry about getting it all down in a history book. You just need to have a note.
An understanding for yourself. Because the thing is that if you understand what your world's history is, if you understand what it is that you've built, what it is that's affected people, you will begin to understand what it is that that's going to do to the people in your universe. A good example, actually, is Game of Thrones, right? So the years are sort of twice as long. The winters are twice as long. That completely changes the way that people approach harvest and storage during that period of time. That's a very simple difference.
There's a reason summer is a code word for being naive in the Game of Thrones universe.
Indeed.
Speaking of, well, not speaking of Game of Thrones. Let's not talk about Game of Thrones. Speaking of living in a place, how do we populate this universe we've built, Ed? What's the best way of making things feel authentic? Maybe I've made loads of characters and I just don't know where to start.
So, characters are great. Everyone loves characters. Remember that when you create a character, everyone is a hero of their own story, right? So they have their story, their universe revolves around them, right? The actions they do, the reactions from those, the results of what they do, that follows every single character in your universe. So your character goes out and does something, your main character does something, but then there's something that someone else is doing that is, again, off camera, and that affects what's going on, but it's not even, again, necessarily a story you need to tell. You just need to see the after effect from them doing so.
Just a reminder, we keep saying off camera. We just mean in your notes somewhere else. Maybe it's another page. Maybe it's even a voice note on your phone. It's something to come back to. You don't have to use filmy words. We just like using them. Also, there's a camera over there, and I keep looking at it.
Also, we're a massive mess in terms of our terminology, because we talk about reading when we mean absorbing. We might talk about writing when, you know, you might not be writing, you might be making a film, whatever. We're using these words in general terms. Let's just put it that way.
So, there's a nice little bullet point here that I quite like. We've built up these characters. We're trying to get a snapshot of reality together. Is that right? Or is it? So
that's really about the story. It's about that moment in the character matters the most in the universe. I'm gonna pick on Star Wars here. Star Wars is a good example because, you know, for the first 3 movies chronologically in the timeline, so episodes 1 to 3, Anakin Skywalker is the most important person in the universe, right? It's about his story because he is going to grow up, kill all the Jedi, become Darth Vader, spoilers.
Spoilers for Star Wars.
Become Darth Vader, and then he ceases to be the most important person in the universe. Luke Skywalker becomes the most important person in the universe because he's going to overthrow the Empire. Then he ceases to be the most important person in the universe, and we move on to another set of characters. So bear in mind which story you're telling, right? You're giving a snapshot of this universe in the moment that you're telling it. You don't need to make sure that everyone understands the entire universe from beginning to end. You just need to make sure that they understand why you're telling this story, and that this story is the central point, as I said, the most important story that's going on in this universe in this moment.
So, speaking of the most important moments in this universe, I've built some characters, Ed, but they're so unlike me. You know, they're modest, intelligent. I don't know how to, react to that. How am I supposed to flesh out a character that's so different to me?
So this is one that I've come across myself many times, especially when they're modest. It's a real problem. A character that doesn't act like you can be really hard to write. It can be really hard to get into that brain space. So my recommendation is don't do it that way. Don't try and get into their brain space if you really aren't making it. Instead, take a step back, go, okay, what would I do? You know, in this situation, I'm not modest, so I would get up on stage and I'd do a panel. You are modest, or the character you're writing is modest, so, okay, how would they do it differently? Well, maybe they'd sit in the crowd, maybe they'd be spending their time building up their courage to ask a question at the Q&A at the end, because they really have this burning question.
Meta?
Well, maybe slightly. They really have this burning question, but they're sat there, you know, they're building up that courage to ask that question. Okay, that's completely different to the way I would approach it, because I'm not this character. That's okay. You need to write characters that aren't you, otherwise your universe is going to get very slightly samey.
The other thing to do is beg, borrow, and steal. Steal from other characters. Steal from people you know. Friends and family and acquaintances and celebrities. Everyone has little habits. My favorite one, because I always think about this, is when he was doing all the press junkets, if you made Chris Evans, Captain America, not the radio presenter, laugh, he would laugh like this. He'd go, ha, 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 and he'd always grab his left or right pec, depending on how funny it was. I've never forgotten that, because I think that's a really good idea of... It's a good mannerism. It shows you how happy and joyful he is. So think about if there's any tics or habits that you want to apply to a certain character, especially if you want to get into their brain space.
And feel free to do a bit of a random mismatch of things. You know, I wander around a lot on the stage, in case you hadn't noticed. It's just a thing I do. A character can do that. It might make them look energetic. It might make them look like they are enthusiastic. It might make them look nervous. It might do any number of things. Think about how it would look different if I was any of those things. I'm not going to tell you which one I am. Think about how it would look different. Feel free to add that to a character, right? You'll start to build the mannerisms of a character who behaves in a certain way, and that will make that character feel real.
And with all these, since we're talking about mannerisms, the idea behind this is it's not they've got blonde hair and they are this tall. It's not describing what's there. It's building an image that people can relate to. So
I think the mannerism you gave is a really good example. You know, that's something that, you know, it's not something you would hear in a description, you know, if you were to describe any member of this crowd. It wouldn't be, oh yeah, when they laugh, this happens. Most of you haven't laughed because I'm not funny. Instead, it's something that you might only see very occasionally. But it really does let you know how that person behaves. And again, going back to the talking about feelings rather than actions, I think that what Leo described again about Chris Evans, that probably brings some kind of feeling into your mind when he describes that. He put, you know, zero effort into that. This is how this person behaves. But it causes a reaction in you when it is described. It causes an emotional reaction.
Right, let me have a think. Okay, so we are building on our idea here. We talked a little earlier about the project paradigm, the big focus point of your a phrase that summarizes everything you want to go for. That might change as things go. So refining your paradigm is relatively important.
Really important. So you, at some point, might decide, say the project takes a year. People change, right? You might decide, you know what? This doesn't really appeal to me so much anymore. I thought it was going to be great, and now I'm not really sure. I wonder if maybe this slightly different paradigm would be better. Now, the first thing you should probably do is put your project away in a drawer for a week, right? Go away, take a step back, live your life for a week.
Don't think about the project. Do some other stuff. Do the washing up. Go for a run. Well, I don't go for a run. Go do something else, completely different. Don't even look at the key inspiration. Don't think, oh, I'm going to watch a film. Don't try and get the spark back from that thing. Switch off.
I mean, feel free to watch a film, but don't go into the film thinking, how do I apply this to my project? And even to the degree of set yourself a reminder, an alarm or whatever, that will remind you to go back to it and try not to think about it, right? Don't go, right, I'm going to remember to go back to this. Just take a step away, live your life for a week, come back to it. Do you still feel the same way? Do you still feel like your paradigm really ought to change because it's just not what you wanted it to be, or not what you now want it to be? That thing that you thought would be a really good idea, yeah, maybe not. Let yourself have a little time to process. If you come back to it, you still want to change it, okay, go ahead and change it. Depending on how far you are through the project, I would almost always recommend that you don't do rewrites on stuff you've already done. So fine, change your paradigm, make some notes. Oh, I'm going to have to change this, I'm going to have to change that. Just minor notes. I know what the thread was like. Now it's got to wibble here and wobble there, because otherwise it won't fit. Cool.
The most important thing, though, even if you're making the slightest rewrites or you're writing reminders, never throw anything away, because there might be an idea that works somewhere else. Ed, after thinking about this cowboys in space thing, I'm not really feeling the cowboys. It's actually a space story I want to write. I want to go full sci-fi.
Ninjas in space.
Yeah, ninjas in space. Yeah, it could be ninjas in space. Who knows? I was watching lots of martial arts films, and it hit me. If there's something that speaks to you and the paradigm's changed, don't throw things away, because you might have a whole other idea there that you could run with another day. Your sidekick could be a main character in another universe.
It's also worth bearing in mind, I mean, we've kind of alluded to it a few times, but a lot of characters aren't very specific to their universe. You could take that character that you've written that you're happy with, but maybe doesn't fit the paradigm anymore, and you can then go ahead and drop that in a different universe. You're writing your Space Cowboys thing, you're happy with it, but you know what? That tertiary character, we're not sure. No, let's stick him in the Space Ninjas thing that we're going to do.
You mean Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Maybe, possibly. Let's stick him in the Space Ninjas thing we're going to do, and then let the other characters live in that universe. Don't throw anything away. That's completely the best advice you will get. Also, if you end up with lots and lots and lots and lots of things, index those things so you can find them again. Having a big stack of notebooks this high with, I know it's in there somewhere, not the best use of your time.
Post-it notes, or what are those little markers? Page markers, that's the one.
Or post-it notes, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, so we've ran up with this idea. I've been thinking about my paradigm, sci-fi story. It was going to be a comic. I think it's going to be a novel now, but I need some help with graphic design and writing things out and a proofreader. I think I'm going to need to build a team, Ed.
It's axiomatic that it takes about, 5 years to be, proficient in your field. That's a thing that you find in a lot of recruitment stuff. I know I constantly see job posts that say 5 years experience. I don't know if anyone else does. The reason for that is quite interesting, because if you add up the other axiom, which is that it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill, it comes to just under 5 years of 40 hours a week. I think someone somewhere knew that at some point, and probably it got lost as people just learn, oh, it's 5 years. It takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. It is absolutely fine if you want to go and learn to be an artist. But bear in mind, that's going to take you 5 years, minimum, right?
To master the skill. Let's put a little addendum on there.
To get to the point where, you know, you might look at someone's artwork and go, wow, I wish I could do that. That's fine. I would absolutely encourage anyone who wants to do that to go do it. We always need more artists, more writers, more editors, more everything in the world.
Make things.
Creative people. That's what I'm trying to say.
Creative people is the word you're looking for. But it's all right to know your limits as well. That's where building a team comes in.
And that's, yeah. So, you know, I am not the best artist in the world. I'm a little better than Stickman, but not a lot. I hire artists. I work with artists. I sit down and I talk to people and I go, okay, you have these skills. I want to do this project. Sometimes I pay people. Sometimes they work with me for the passion of doing so. And we split any profits that we make. What's important is that you make a deal that works for you. And the other thing that is important is that they have the skills that you need, that you don't want to go out and spend all the time teaching yourself. If you imagine you wanted to write a comic, for example, you would need, obviously, a writer, maybe an editor, an artist, that is a penciler, an inker, and a colorist. You would need a letterer. You would need someone to do the graphic design for you and the layout. That's quite a lot of jobs and quite a lot of years if you want to do it entirely solo at a level that most people would be happy with.
That's why building a team, we find building a team works for us. That's why we've got lots of different people we work with. But it's not just about finding people to do jobs. Building a team isn't just about that. It's about having people who will look at an idea for you. It's for people to bounce ideas off of as you're creating things. It's to stay motivated. To say, hey, I've just written the first paragraph of my new Kenobi fan fiction where I am Ewan McGregor. Do you want to read it?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to find someone else who'll read it for me, you know, to give me some feedback. It's not just about finding job roles. That's the first time we've been heckled.
When you're looking for someone to work with you, whether you're paying them, whether they're working with you for the passion of the project, remember, creative people want to input their creativity, okay? And they deserve the opportunity to do so if they're going to be part of your team, whether you're paying them or not, okay? I don't know anyone who's in creative work just for the money. I can't imagine anyone who's in creative work just for the money.
Oh, no, I'm not going to make that joke. That could be there. Are there people from Nope.
No, maybe not.
Nope, let's not do that.
Remember that people want to have some kind of input. They want to be involved. They want to help bring this world to life and bring part of their vision into it. This comes back to refining the project paradigm to some degree. You've got to be aware that you're going to need some flexibility if you're going to bring other people into your project.
We've had a lot of voice actors join our writer's room for our audio dramas because they wanted to write some scenes or build a character with a bit more detail.
Absolutely. So when you're thinking about bringing someone on board, think about how firm you need to be in certain aspects of your idea and how flexible you can be in other places. Explain that firmness and flexibility to the people that you're going to work with and make sure that they join aware of where it is you want to go and what you need to get out of the project versus the things you can compromise on.
If it's your idea, you have a vision, it's probably the paradigm, but you should always let people know where the lines can be drawn and a bit more
blurred.
Flexible. And blurred.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I was working on this novel. It's really hard typing for hours on end and not proofreading. How do I believe in myself when nobody else is... No one's reading my Ewan McGregor Kenobi fan fiction?
Good.
What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to stay motivated like this?
There's a degree to which I've found over time, projects have sort of 80% of it is pretty fun, and it feels like it takes 20% of the effort. And then the last 20%, the grind that it is, feels like 80% of the effort. You know, that might be that you sit down, you write the script for the audio drama you're going to record. It feels like most of the effort is done. You know, you get voice actors in, they stand there, they record. That was fun. That was that was a
now
good
it's time to edit the
now
audio
you have to
drama.
edit the raw audio.
Oh, sorry, I'm flashing back.
Yeah. Bear in mind that there are going to be aspects that you find less fun in the project. It might be the initial part, it might be the writing. But broadly, most creative projects I've worked on have this 80-20 rule, where just about 80% of it is fine, and 20% of it is the worst grind you will ever go through.
I'm taking a quick detour back to building a team, because I've just thought of the 80-20 rule in its worst way. I've got a friend who keeps giving me ideas. He keeps saying it shouldn't be about, Kenobi anymore, it should be about Hayden Christensen. And he keeps telling me all these suggestions. Why do I keep thinking, oh, Kenobi's out today, I saw his face on the tube. That's why I keep thinking about Star Wars. Anyway, I keep getting loads of suggestions. And they keep telling me to change things. What should I do about this friend that's joined my team and is really enthusiastic, but telling me loads of stuff?
So this comes back to what I was saying, stabbing, yes, good idea. Well, maybe not. Just murder is apparently illegal, I hear. Apparently. This comes back to what I was saying about when you bring people onto your team, make sure that they understand where the lines are. No, you're writing Obi-Wan Kenobi fanfiction, you're writing Obi-Wan Kenobi fanfiction. Like, I understand you like this other character, that's lovely. It's not what I'm writing. Maybe we'll write that next time. Maybe that's the next project.
We call that a symptom of the unhelpful, helpful friend. So sometimes you've just got to sort of draw the lines and remind people what they're working on. Repeatedly, potentially. Let's talk about... Oh, time. Time is a prison. What else
If you've been
is there?
wondering why we've been rushing through all of this stuff, it's because time.
So we talked a little bit about why the 80-20 rule, and that's how things can get boring. But what if there's just 10,000 hours to do something? I've not got time for that. I've got a life to live. What do we do?
Everyone has this problem. However, a lot of people don't look at their time and think, okay, could I be being creative in this moment? When you're hoovering, it doesn't take a lot of brain power. Well, not for me. I'm not sure about Leo.
Hoovers are heavy and noisy, and they're distracting.
There you go. Find the times when you can zone, when you can think about stuff. And at the end of the day, if you come up with a really good idea while you are doing that, all you have to do is stop for a moment, pull out your phone, write it down, and then resume what you're doing, right? Come back to it when you're ready to sit down. I very seldom suffer from like a writer's block because I do all of my thinking outside of when I'm sitting down, and I make notes, and then I go ahead and I sit down and I write up my notes during the time that I'd be sitting and writing.
Just a little note. If you're one of the people, if you're like me, and you get the most brilliant idea just as you're about to fall asleep, put a notebook or a scrap of paper somewhere within arm's reach with a pen. Don't use your phone because you'll be tempted to doom scroll. Just write something down and then put it away. Just to have stuff nearby to add to things.
I'm going to slightly disagree with you on one aspect about your phone, because the other thing you can do is there is a lovely speech-to-text app called Otter. And apart from being, broadly pretty good, it's also occasionally hilarious because, it just doesn't understand. But it records, it both turns your voice file into text, but also keeps the recording. And if you can clearly see that the text is wrong, you just click on the text where it is and it'll play from that point in the recording, which is fantastic. It's called Otter. It's available on iPhone and Android.
Otter, like the animal.ai, is what you're going to want to Google.
Highly recommended. Very good. Well, I use it when I'm like, I had this idea, do this thing. I do that all the time because I'm lying in bed. I'm like, damn it. I know exactly how to solve this problem now.
So I've been building my project, and I realized this guy called George Lucas already did my idea. It's called The Clone Wars. What do I do if someone's already got an idea that's really similar to mine? A space western or a Stakes on the Plane or...
So there's an axiom among writers that there is no such thing as a new story. You may or may not have heard it. I broadly agree with that, but I think you can tell a story in a different way. Your influences and the things that make you you and make you creative are going to mean that there is a level of difference no matter if you went away and said, right, I'm going to tell the story of a farm boy who leaves home and saves the universe, right? That doesn't have to be Star Wars. You will write your own kind of story. As a general rule, unless you are deliberately copying off someone, you are not going to be within the threshold of copyright. The copyright threshold is about 15%. You will, unless you know you're doing it, you're sat there deliberately copying someone, you are going to be 15% different. So the answer is don't worry too much about it unless you know you're doing something wrong.
How many Japanese high schoolers in anime have superpowers? There we go. Problem solved. I could be talking about anything right now. One last thing, Ed. I'm actually just not sure what I'm making is good enough. You know, I've had my doubts about this thing. What do I do? How do I overcome that?
This is a hard one, not going to lie. There's a degree to which stubbornness helps. However, the thing to remember is that, as I said near the beginning, if you're creating something that you want to see, and you can create it at a quality that you're happy with, or close, you know, I'm a perfectionist, sometimes you have to be a bit pragmatic. If you are doing something that you want to create, that you want to see, that you want to bring into reality, there will be someone else out there. Have faith with your first creative project, create it, then go try and find those people. Really, no one I've ever met is so unique and wanted to see something that is so unlike anything anyone else wants to see that there is no audience for it. Maybe it's not huge, but we are talking about your first creative project here. And I think it's okay if your audience is not everybody in the world, it's anime fans, right? Or anime fans of high school girls with superpowers. I don't know.
Your audience can just be you. If you want to see something get done, do it. And then if you put it up somewhere, someone will find it and go, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, make the thing.
Make the thing first, then worry about whether it's sellable, whether it's going to, you know, take the world by storm. I was talking with someone. No, in fact, I won't. We'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, no, you might be wondering why I'm standing here, Ed. Okay, questions, hands up, anybody. Oh, there's someone at the back there. I'll come to you in a second. Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
So how do you use characters, like their personality and character, to show the reader, like, their way of being, like their particular, the special thing about them is worthwhile and, like, worth considering adopting for the reader?
Okay, so we're talking about getting an attachment going to characters with mannerisms and characterization, is that right? To kind of get the reader hooked in. I'm not sure.
I'm going to try and answer your question, and then you can nod if you think I've got it answered your question. Make your character real. Find the reality of that person, because whether that person is someone who everyone's going to like or everyone's going to dislike, as long as they aren't someone that every single person is going to have a very neutral reaction to, which is basically someone with no strong opinions on anything, as long as they aren't that, there will be people out there who like them, people out there who dislike them. It's only people who have no core, no ability to say, no, I'm going to stand up for what I think is right. I mean, Red Skull and Captain America, right? Both of them, they know what's right. Red Skull obviously being a very good example of he's the hero of his own story. He's saving the world.
In his mind.
In his mind. But each of those characters, because they have this thing that they believe in and they stand for, when they get pushed on that thing, they're going to then show who they are. Does that about answer it?
There was a single nod. I think I'm gonna add to that. Don't picture a person you want this. Don't make a person and think, oh yeah, I hope these people love this person. Build someone that you're trying to sort of. You might hate me right now. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. There's going to be different things that people will pick up. Oh, this guy's really enthusiastic, or oh, this guy's really what's the right word I'm looking for? Verbose. Talks a lot. There are people who like that. There are people who don't like that. if you build your character, if you add things to their personality, there will be things that counteract and things that sort of add to that. You know, once you build your character, take another look, show it to people, show them in context, and then see what people's reactions get. You don't want a 100% positive reaction. You want a mix of reactions, because that means they're a real person.
Hi, I'm the nervous side character.
Oh, you're the nervous side. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Hi there. Basically, I've been thinking, the fantasy novel I'm working on currently came originally from a Naruto fan fiction 15 years ago. So I'm wondering, what's your most fun, most bizarre transformation one of your stories has gone through?
Snap. My most bizarre transformation is from a piece of fan fiction I wrote. It was very, very early on in my writing career, before it was a career. I wrote a piece of fan fiction about the creation of a... any Farscape fans in the audience? No? Yeah, okay, cool. About the creation of Sikozu as a biloid. So I wrote a fan fiction. And I thought, okay, this is nice. And then I came to the point where I was writing a cyborg superhero. And I decided, you know what? Practically no one's ever read this. I think I'll reuse it. Think I'll shift a few details around and have the person who made that character be the one who makes this character, and pretty much the same situation. So yeah, Snap, fanfic.
My favorite
Nothing wrong with that at all.
My favorite fanfic recycling is all the cringy anime voices I used to use now in my games and audiobooks. Okay.
Hiya, I'm a teacher and I run a comic and manga club for a school. My students are amazing, they're all here. They're the most creative people I've ever met, and they love designing their original characters, and when they show me them, they can describe a full world that that character should be in. But I'd like to know, what are some concrete steps they can take so they don't just have a sketchbook full of only characters and all of the ideas about the world in their head? What can they do next to start developing themselves and really building a story?
So they've got the character, they've got their world. They want to, if they want to then start telling a story, the answer is put that character in that world and then give them a poke. Make something happen. Doesn't matter what, you know, their village can blow up, their girlfriend can leave them, it doesn't matter, whatever. Give them some kind of a poke that pushes them on, and see what happens. Just, if you've got to that point of character creation, if you've got to that point of universe understanding, give them a poke. Just start them rolling down the hill. See what happens. Follow that story. Write that story. Bring that story to life. I think that's what I would recommend.
Hi there, yeah. My name's Sam. I'm a marketing and communications officer for UHive Social Metaverse. I'm just curious how you'd put your creative spin on speech when you're talking about a project, more so for the selling side of things than the actual creation itself.
Do you want me to say this one? Okay, so the interesting thing about speaking about things is you need to sound like you're interested. Even if you're not, try and figure out what makes it tick. If you've got a creative idea, what is it that you like about it? Is it the fact that it's a vast world with unexplored planets that are just brimming with possibility? Is it the fact that this hero is super buff and handsome and he's definitely not based on me? You know, whatever. Like, if you can think of the things that you like about it and take it down to its barest points. Keep it simple. That's why superheroes are superheroes. You know, you want to keep it short and sweet.
My answer is feelings, not events.
Yeah, feelings, not events.
Focus on talking to people about what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, why you've chosen to follow this route, why you've chosen to bring these characters to life rather than something else. What makes it special to you, which is part of what Leo was talking about. But start with why. Why are you doing this? Because humans are actually genetically, biologically wired to hear the why first. It's not something most people do. Strongly recommend a TED Talk by Simon Sinek called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. Or you can Google Simon Sinek, start with why.
We like puzzles. We've got time for maybe 2 questions if they're really nice. Other than that, this might be the last one.
Hi. So my question is, when you're writing a very unlikable character, how do you put aside your own hatred for them?
Well, there are a few alternatives for that. You can always just have them fall over on their face on beds of nails every so often. That's always a possibility.
So this one might take some doing, but just as we were talking about building a character there will be people that, in this world, there will be people that follow this villain for something. Every villain is a hero who made a mistake because they think what they're doing is right, and they've become so convinced of their own convictions that they're going to do that. There are going to be people who like that character for whatever reason. If you can focus on the motivating point for that character, even if you hate him, even if you know that they're going to die at the end, you're trying to get them to finish their story. So if you need to make them villainous, you don't just have to make them kick a puppy every 5 minutes. You want to just make sure, is it what they do? Ask yourself why again, you know?
There's one other thing you can do. Someone asked me a sort of related question, which was, I don't know how to write a romantic relationship. I don't know what to do. What should I do? And I said, write a friendship and come back and edit it, right? Because it's not that big a leap. So if you're really struggling to make that character as unlikable as you want to, make some notes about what needs to be different as you go, but write the character as bad as you can possibly bear it. And then go back and edit them to be worse.
We've got time for one last question. Does anyone want to be the last question? Here we go.
So I understand introducing characters to help showcase the talents or problems of my main character or to drill home the paradigm of my world. But do you have any tips on how to decide which side characters should have interactions with one another and how those interactions should manifest?
We cover this a little bit, of course, but not specifically. So it's about what's important, right? What's important to the story? What's important to the character development? Think about, does this build... So you might have a sort of a side character chain, as it were. You've got the main character and a side character that talks to them and a side character that talks to them. Those two characters interacting could be really important because it affects how the side character then talks to the main character, which affects the crux of the story. So just have a think about, is this character important? Is what they're going to say important? Is it going to affect this story that I'm trying to tell? Or is it something that can more or less happen off screen and no one is ever going to know the difference? I'd start there. Also, there's a little bit of, is it fun? Like, is it a fun little interaction? Is it a thing that's going to make you smile or the reader smile when they read it? Does it have to be important? Not always. But if you're in doubt, I'd go with the important. If you're not in doubt, have a bit of fun. Let's face it, most of us here are not creatives full-time. Part of doing this whole thing is to have fun.
To completely lower the tone and make it more basic, if you're having trouble picking which side characters, think about if they've got any shared backstory. Did they go to the same school? Are they from the same place? Could they catch up and go, oh, you're from Sandland. Cool. This is a really, really damning example of not being creative.
Making up names on the fly is literally the hardest thing that anyone will ever do creatively, I swear.
But maybe they've got a shared background. Maybe they don't. Maybe they've got some antagonist. Maybe they like the character, the main character, for different reasons. And that's a clash point. If you can think of a way to... It might go back to the new character in some way. Okay. That was a whirlwind.
It was.
No, I'm not going to beg for one more question. We're
going to be around for a little bit. If you'd like to talk to us, feel free, come over, talk about anything you'd like to talk about. Yeah, thank you very much for sitting there and listening to us ramble.
We've got another, last October's panel is on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in audio stuff, we did an audio drama panel. It's at Shades of Vengeance. on YouTube.
Yeah, I think that's
that's us. Shades of Vengeance.
you, everyone.
Give us a Google. Thank you very much.